Howdy, Lise. How are ya?
Hanging in there, Dewey. How are you?
I'm doing well. I've come to the conclusion that the conclusion of all of this is going to happen at some point in time in the future. I have no real control over it. I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm going to keep moving forward. How about you?
Same. I mean, it's all about controlling the controllables, right? And so much is out of our control right now, but we still have quite a few things that we're controlling, and things like our health and our mental state and our food intake and our exercise and expanding our world by doing things like reading books that you might not have read or catching up on movies that you wanted to see or um, learning a new task or craft or hobby or skill. I'm blown away at all the kind of social media posts I'm seeing about people learning new things like, learning how to cook for the first time or learning how to knit or painting. Or for me, I'm doing puzzles. I'm still on the same puzzle I started at the beginning of all this. It's a big one. But it's for me, it's kind of fun to see what people are doing, how they're utilizing this time to grow as human beings. I think it's kind of cool.
I think we led the charge unbeknownst to us because there are many in the world that we're in, right? We're in the tennis world, and so we probably see more tennis related content on social media feeds than most people. But the number of people who are putting out content at various levels, different things, is grown exponentially, right? We jumped into this, I don't know what, a month before all of this started, but with
Yeah.
no anticipation that we would be doing this in the middle of this because nobody knew what this was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we started this journey a little bit ahead, but it's been interesting to see people try to do the kinds of things that we're doing with this show, or that you've been doing with Parenting Aces for a very long time. And I think we're starting to see some people come up with some pretty creative and good ideas on how they can help people. What things have you started seeing that have really caught your eye and said, ah, that's it, somebody got it, somebody thought out of the box and they got it, nailed it.
Well, one of the things enjoying personally watching is the challenges that the pro players are putting out, and then people kind of jumping in and taking on the challenge. So the latest thing was Roger Federer posted, himself volleying against a wall and how many volleys could he get in a row. And so now all of these other professional players, but also I'm seeing coaches, I'm seeing fans, I'm seeing junior players kind of jump in and post their acceptance of the challenge and volleying up against the wall, and I love that. I'm also seeing some great like fitness content from, of course, people like Dean Hollingworth, who I've been sharing his content for a while now since I met him at the WTCA conference 2 years ago, I guess, 2.5 years ago now. But there's all sorts of really great fitness content out there that's some tennis specific, but some more general. And I love that. And then the other thing that I'm loving seeing is these weekly webinars that USTA Player Development's putting on now. And y'all know sometimes I go off on USTA, but I want to give them
We
props
all
for
do.
this because I think they're doing a really good job with these webinars, and they're bringing in some really qualified experts that who are providing concrete information, really useful tips and information that I think everybody can benefit from. And so I'm pleased to see that. I think, what's going to be interesting, Dewey, and I'd love your take on this, is the whole notion of what's happening with college tennis and college recruiting. What are you
Yeah.
seeing around that?
Well, we got an email from our CEO sometime last week, and I believe it was actually the same day that you had a podcast type of thing with someone talking about the college situation and the
Yeah.
where recruiting is going over this period of time, I think it's still somewhat up in the air because we don't know what's going to happen with football, right? So we know basketball money didn't happen. That impacts, and I was watching the one that you did specifically, and you were talking to someone who was saying, a lot of programs have already spent that money and while for things that are going to happen in the future, and it might not necessarily, that money isn't going to come back to them. They're not going out and asking those vendors for the funds back. So that is money that was spent that's going to have to come out of a budget which didn't receive the basketball money. Now, football money doesn't come, which is an even bigger pool. What happens with non-revenue sports? And then there's the whole thing of, well, what happens with those that have an extra year of eligibility? And I think what we heard through our CEO, who speaks to college coaches all the time, he's kind of the person he is the person within the program responsible for the whole college recruiting process with our players, was on the Division III side. They're not anticipating a ton of those players coming back. That some of them have a requirement they be enrolled full time. They're moving on to internships. They're doing things, and so that may not be a huge thing. On the D1 side, the advice that kind of came to us is, if you are someone who has an offer on the table, makes sense to take that offer right now rather than holding on and waiting to see what happens. Lock in a commitment if possible. So those are a couple of things that came through in an email to us. What other things really struck you in the conversation that you had?
Well, those two things, and I've been in the last couple years pushing Division III really hard because I think it's a great option for a lot of junior tennis players. And I think with all of this going on, and like you said, that basketball money not coming in, and now, who knows if the football money's coming in. Division III has never offered athletic scholarships, but even at the Division I level where they do have athletic scholarships, it doesn't necessarily mean those scholarships are going to be funded. And if the revenue isn't coming in, as we know from basketball already and possibly from football, even schools that have traditionally been fully funded are maybe not going to have the money available for scholarships, and maybe are going to be looking harder at players who have the ability to self-pay for their education and not rely on that athletic scholarship money. So for me, as somebody who is pushing D3, I think this is a reason to push it even harder. That, I think we're going to see fewer changes at Division III schools, whereas we're going to see probably some pretty drastic changes at a lot of the D1 schools.
So we both have a connection to Georgia, right? And I would suspect University of Georgia will see a lot more Georgia players because of the ability to use Hope Scholarship, so the lottery money to fund college tuition, which has always meant that it was an advantage for them for recruiting players from Georgia because there was essentially a 50% scholarship built in for kids who had good grades and were natives to Georgia. It might be even more important now. I know that they had used it on the men's side, particularly where there were less scholarships, to be able to stretch those scholarship dollars. And then if you were to look at the well-heeled who can self-fund, when John Roddick, Andy's brother, was at University of Georgia, the family felt like that Manny Diaz had done such a great job with John that they said, okay, we don't need the money, that you take back his money and use it to bring in additional good players, which led to an NCAA, or in part led to an NCAA championship while John was there. Might be more of that. And tennis is certainly, we're lock, chalk, not filled to the brim, but a good bit of our pot is full of people who have set the money aside for college early on in their child's lives. And tennis is kind of the thing which differentiates them between some other kid whose parents potentially are going to put their name on a building and have good grades and all of those other things to get in.
I mean,
So,
another piece that I thought was really interesting too is this whole notion of what's happening with the ACT and the SAT, right? So the last tests were canceled. We don't know yet what's going to happen with the summer test dates, but what we're
yes, my
hearing
youngest daughter was
is
supposed to take the SAT, and yeah. Hmm.
yeah. So what we're hearing is that schools may now be saying, you don't have to have a test score. We're going to look at your package, your admission package, or your application package based just on your GPA and your extracurriculars and all of the other things, but we're not going to worry about test scores. And what we're also hearing is that maybe some schools are going to change their academic requirements because they need butts and seats. Schools have to fill their dorms, they have to fill the classrooms with tuition paying bodies so that professors can be paid, so that operating expenses can be covered, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in terms of all of that. And the word on the street is the Ivies aren't going to make any changes, right? I
Right.
mean, they've got lines and lines and lines of people waiting to get in, so they're not hurting. But it's maybe that next tier academically of schools where we may see some changes.
Or is this the straw that breaks the camel's back, as we've been talking for decades of tuitions rising, making things really ridiculously expensive and people being saddled with student loans for forever? Is this maybe something that breaks it where at least a certain portion of everybody's collegiate experience is going to be e-learning, and maybe there just isn't going to be all of those people in dormitories. Maybe the parties that exist at the fraternal organizations, maybe in some cases, are just going to go away, and
Yeah.
those physical facilities get repurposed into something else. And I have no idea what that something else is. But I'm sure that there are people who are looking, saying, well, this might not be the same. And so we have to figure out what is going to come next. And that's what I've started seeing in the tennis world is the online offerings are starting to get pretty good, that it's not just a challenge. And speaking of challenge, I'm going to go back to your challenge thing and talking about Roger
Yeah.
Federer. One of the ones that has gone viral recently came from a program in Spain that we're doing some things with, the Soto Tennis Academy, and one coming
Yeah.
up with, there was
I
an
love
apple on a
them. I
young
love
lady's
Coach
head, and
Dan.
he hit the ball
Yeah.
from behind and whacked the ball off of the girl's head. And it had, well, couple 100,000 views, I think, when I looked at it this morning, which just kind of came out of nowhere. But they've been, we're actually, you talk about fitness shows, we're doing a fitness show with them that starts next Tuesday. So the
Awesome.
fitness directors here at ATA and the fitness director at Soto we're putting together a show. But they've been really good at making sure that their athletes are prepared for what's going to come afterwards. So while they're putting out a lot of
Yeah.
the fun stuff that's going viral, they are also doing things in a way where the athletes know that when they come back, there will be better in certain ways, even though that they may be rusty hitting balls and things like that. They know that they'll be more prepared in other ways. Have you seen anybody who's doing that kind of thing, or starting to offer those kinds of online courses for players, things like that? I think I saw something on
Sure.
the Parenting Aces with Craig Shaughnessy. Or,
Yeah, yeah. Craig O'Shaughnessy's doing a lot of offerings right now, and hopefully people follow him on Twitter or pick up on his stuff on our Facebook page. He posts in our group all the time, his latest stuff. So he's doing stuff. Mark Kovacs is doing stuff along with Jorge Capistani. They're offering a free course right now. I think today maybe the deadline to sign up for that one. I'm seeing all kinds of fabulous online stuff from coaches, from academies. I'm seeing, the mental side of the game, courses developing around that. David Benzel has been somebody who has been offering free webinars for years, and we've promoted them on Parenting Aces, and he's been on our podcast many times talking about his work with families and training the mental side of the game. I know Jorge Valverde, for his clients, is offering some additional kind of free content, but you have to already be signed up for one of his other programs. So it's
He was
not just
actually in
free to
our
the
academy.
public.
He came into
Yeah.
our Zoom Academy practice on Monday and
Oh,
presented
cool.
to just our academy because we are a client of his.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot of coaches are understanding kind of this whole thing. I published an article early on in this about how we need to continue to support the coaches, but at the same time, the coaches need to make sure they're offering things of value to entice the tennis families to continue to support them financially. And I think a lot of coaches have really stepped up to that challenge. I'm very pleased to see that. I'm a little surprised at the lack of content and information we're seeing directly from the coaching certifying organizations. I was kind of expecting to see more coming out of those, and maybe lending guidance to their certified coaches about how to maintain an income stream during all of this. Maybe that's coming. I don't know. Maybe it's privileged information, and since I'm
There
not a
are
certified coach, I'm not seeing it.
some of it's a U.S. thing because some of the other national federations are putting together programs to help financially support the coaches, and probably more
Well,
so
I did
where they're
see,
licensed
yeah,
rather than certified.
I did see the LTA stepped up to do something, and we're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen here. And I know a lot of coaches are having conversations amongst themselves. I'm, part of all these Facebook groups that are coaching groups, and I just kind of lurk there. But there is a lot of conversation going on around, what's going to happen if they can't get back on the court and teach, and how are they going to pay their bills and stay in their homes and support their families, which is, a real concern, and it's frightening. And I think if we want our industry to survive this and come out on the other side stronger than when we went in, then there's going to have to be some level of financial commitment from the organizations that have the means to help support the coaches and the players. I mean, we're seeing all kinds of online conversations among the lower level professional players.
Yeah, I have no idea where that is going. I do have a prediction though. I have a that um, there are two types of people providing real resources online, and those are people who feel like they need to do it and are very uncomfortable doing it at this moment in time, and they need to keep doing what they're doing, but with the expectation that as soon as we're able to get back on the court, they're not doing this online stuff anymore, because if you're not comfortable with it, it's going to show through in a camera like this, and then get back on the court and do it. And there are others who view it as an opportunity to do some things that they've always wanted to do digitally, virtually, and they're really digging into creating the kind of resources which could be marketed as an online academy going forward, where they work with players remotely. So lots of players who are in places who they don't have good coaching. I think that was our first show actually. Was what
Yeah,
do you do if you're in a place and you don't have good coaching?
right.
For those people, the offerings that are going to be available at the end of this are going to be phenomenal, because people are figuring out how to work remotely by using Zoom and Facebook Live and things like that, and then creating the content and creating the resources to be able to help people work through it on their own, being able to do video analysis of players remotely and comparing them to other players. All of those things which have been available are now starting to get packaged by people that have the time to dig into it and the need to dig into it because they have to service the players that they already have. So I think that's just
Right.
going to be that's going to be a great benefit to the tennis community coming out of this.
Agreed. And I'll be remiss if I don't mention a couple people, but I know Todd Whittam, who is in Florida, who people that listen to my podcast, Todd's a regular on there, but he's doing exactly that. And we have created a playlist on our YouTube channel with his little short instructional videos. Also, Emma Doyle is doing some stuff, and the WTCA Facebook page has a lot of really good online instructional information as well. So I want to throw that out for those of you on Facebook. Check out the WTCA. It's the Women's Tennis Coaching Association, and there are a lot of coaches on there posting some great content for at-home learning. So
cool. Well, I think we're just over our 20-minute mark. It didn't take long
Look
today.
at us.
And I don't think we whined about people, not taking things seriously. I think it's starting to show that people are taking things seriously. I want to caution people that just because you hear better numbers coming out of somewhere like New York does not mean we're anywhere close to the end of this. I hear people now talking about what will happen, the number of deaths, but now they're talking about the number of deaths by August. So that means we're going to be in this for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And to end on a happy note, I want to just say today is the first night of Passover. So I want to wish a happy Passover to those who observe. And Sunday is Easter. And I want to wish a happy Easter to those who observe. And hopefully y'all have found ways to connect with your loved ones digitally for these holidays. I don't know if there's some other holiday going on that I'm just not aware of, but if there is, or even if there isn't, I hope that everyone is finding a way to stay connected with those they love.
Yes, ma'am. And you stay safe, Lisa. We will talk to you all next week. Take care.
It's a date. See you, Duey.
Bye.
Bye.